I feel like we just had this conversation, and the reality is 1 month ago we did, talking about the federal government, borderline tyranny, abuse of powers, wiretapping journalist phone calls, trying to figure out where the leak is in their department, trying to cover up Benghazi and not wanting to talk about the hearings with that. Oh, and of course, using the IRS as a pit bull to attack political enemies of the liberal left and the president's organization. I wish we were past that. But frankly, the federal government, to me, is just showing once again that at this point in history, we've moved to an era where the federal government truly is becoming as much of a foe to the American people, certainly as it could potentially be a friend. And I'm talking about the monitoring scandal that's been unveiled and what the NSA has been doing with our phone calls for years. Now, there are some people that might say, hey, Jake, the recording of all this phone call data in some, offshore, off the faraway place in Utah in the deserts, why should we care about anything like that? They've been doing it for years. They may have been doing it for years. But I've compared it to this. Let's say you suspect one of your children is on cocaine or another drug. It's one thing to suspect it. It's another thing to find that cocaine in her top dresser drawer or his top dresser drawer. At that point, there's no more suspicion, I joked when I got my very first smartphone, which happens to be a Verizon wireless brand. Now the government can track me everywhere I am. Years later, I find out that's not a joke. The government not only can, but is tracking us wherever we go. Has been for years. Every text message, every time you search on your phone, every internet search. And of course, every phone call. Not necessarily the content of that phone call, but every person you called, how long you talked to, where you were on the planet when you dialed the phone call, and where they were on the planet where they received the phone call. And this just stays in some little information box someplace that's never going to be used unless they need it. When General Petraeus got into a sex scandal a few months ago back, over a year ago back now, that's a 4-star general. Where do you think the government magically showed up with 30,000 emails and phone conversations that he had with his alleged mistress and with other people that were involved in that whole sex scandal? I don't think they got him in his inbox left in his computer. That's a 4-star general. Now imagine what they want to do to you if they want to come after you. This is a huge, egregious breach of power, and the fact that the President of the United States is sitting here trying to defend this is appalling to every American. What is it that the average American sees and understands that idiots in Washington, D.C. obviously do not understand? Our personal freedoms are worth something. We understand we can't be 100% safe, but our freedoms are worth more than just feeling safe. You have to give up some safety, some of that safety net in order to enjoy freedoms. Children don't have all the freedoms in the world. That's why they don't get to make all the decisions, and parents are supposed to hold and keep them safe. But adults, we get the decision-making power because we get the ability to screw up our own lives if we want. That's part of taking away that safety net. Right now, this idea of safety and us having to give up our freedom is hogwash. And what you're seeing is the old order in Washington, D.C. Dianne Feinstein, a Democrat, saying that this Edward Snowden that unveiled this whole monitoring scandal to the world is a traitor. John Boehner, Republican, says he should be tried for treason. These are the old guard in Washington, D.C., the ones that, along with President George Bush, let this protocol begin and start. And 4 years after it started, it could have been dropped. And the President of the United States could have stopped this thing anytime he wanted, but he didn't. Despite the fact he ran in 2 elections saying that he was not George Bush and he would not violate the personal freedoms of Americans. Yet, when put in that position, what did he do? He continued it. He didn't stop it. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do not think the federal government has gotten too big and too involved in our lives, then you need to wake up. After all, if a bank is too big to fail, what is this federal government turning into now?